Chapter 4 of Man and Nature on the Broads by Arthur Henry Patterson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. April in Broadland. Beneath a willow, long forsook, the fisher seeks his custom nook, and bursting through the crackling sedge, he startles from the bordering wood the bashful wild duck's early brood. By Warton. The days of mingled shower and sunshine have dawned upon peaceful Broadland. Lured by the warmer days of an April sun and the refreshing raindrops, nature has assumed a pleasant smile. The pale young leaves are everywhere eagerly unfolding their beauties, and the joyous birds are making the countryside merry with glad song. Above them all, towering heavenwards, the skylark pours out the fulness of its little heart in praise to its Creator. All thy works praise thee. The clank of the bit is still heard in the fields, for Farmer Giles and his good man Hodge have not yet completed their sowing of the seed for the winter crops, and it is pleasant to hear the cheery whoa of the ploughman as he rests for a moment the panting horses, while he runs his eye with justifiable pride up the straight, clean-cut furrow he has just turned over. We can excuse his self-congratulatory remark, "The Prince o' Wales couldn't cut a furrow claner if he tried, 'bor." We have reached Broadland to day by road, for what can be more delightful than a country drive when the hedgerows are putting on their bright new vesture, and the wild flowers are peering out from their mossy nooks beneath them, and the little birds are playing at hide and seek in the thickening foliage, preparatory to settling down to the sterner duties of domestic life. It has been a glorious jog trot, and Boxer has had matters pretty well all his own way to day, and mayhap has been wondering if we'd forgotten to bring the whip, for it's little hurrying he has had these 6 or 7 miles. Who could scramble across country, notwithstanding a smart passing shower necessitated the outbringing of the big green gingham strapped behind the footboard, when so much that is lovely invited our attention and our admiration, and the praise of him who pronounced as good the creatures of his hands. There was scant room for an agnostic in our vehicle. The blue of the harebell, the ruddier tints of the wood sorrel, and the pale yellow of the primrose contrasted delightfully with the fresh green blades of the various grasses which are shooting up their myriad spears. How refreshing to the eye were the meadows dotted with buttercups and daisies, and even more barren patches on the uplands sprinkled with the broad-leaved coltsfoot, from among which peered the starry flowers of yellow. And then the birds. Have they not been conspicuous by their presence and their song? The wayside hedges and the woodland are peopling rapidly with the immigrant songsters. The harsher cries of those that roam this district in the barren winter are replaced now by the cheerier melodies from a myriad little southerners' throats. But we are anticipating. The wheels grind heavily at times when rumbling up and down hill, for the recent rains have made the roads so soft and, in places, somewhat sloppy. Observe those pied wagtails at yon roadside puddle. How oddly they flick their elongated tails as they daintily run beside it. It may be there are some tiny midges gyrating over the pools which have smitten their fancy. They take to erratic wing on our approach. rooks have seriously settled to household duties. Such cawing from daybreak until dusk returns is the order of the day. Surely the old elms never could have had noisier tenants. That small bright brown birdie upon that hawthorn spray is a redstart. Firetail, the natives call him. Its plaintive weet weet becomes a familiar sound in the woodland in the month of April. Our steed pulls up at a horse pond to take a sip. We spring out of the vehicle, impelled by curiosity to take a peep in amongst some fern fronds uncurling to the warmth of springtime. A tiny bird has just flown out, and upon a bramble is fussily uttering its quick repeated notes. It is a chiffchaff. See, in the stubbly remnants of last year's grasses, snugly sheltered by the fern leaves, is its nest. 6 small creamy white eggs are the treasures which have become a care to the half frightened, over solicitous parent. Never fear, bonny birdie, we touch not such precious objects. The chiffchaff suddenly darts down in the thorny hedgerow. A shadow as of a larger bird glides across the horse pond. We look up and discover the greater occasion of alarm in the shape of a hovering kestrel. The speckled bird of prey might have had one eye upon the little percher, with intent malicious, but it certainly has had another upon a venturesome field mouse in the mead beyond. Down like a stone it descends upon the hapless rodent, and as it hies away to some familiar rail stump, whereon to devour it at its leisure, we can discern the wretched creature struggling in the bird's sharp talons. In turn the kestrel takes to precipitate flight. Its quick eye has detected the approaching gamekeeper, who, silly man, has sworn some time or other to take away its life. Can he yet be so ignorant as to imagine this hawk is anything else but one of the greatest friends of the farmer and the rearer of our game birds? Several house martins, conspicuous by the white upon their backs, on rapid wing dash up and down above the horse pond, and disappear over the furze that border it, and again as suddenly return. We are afloat once again upon the limpid waters of the Broad. Boxer is munching his well-earned fodder in the reed thatched stable behind the village inn. The knowing old animal enjoys a Broadland visit to the full. Signs of life are showing everywhere around us. Last year's sapless, leaf-denuded reed stems are growing thinner, and the remnants of those broken and the debris of the sedges and the rushes lie in a confused tangle, more inextricably than if woven among them upon the surface of the water. Left unfortunately to decay and rot, and then to sink beneath, year by year this accumulation makes fresh soil, and so as time rolls on the Broads become more circumscribed in area. Thus it is that some of the smaller Broads are now scarcely bigger than fish ponds. Gradually, but surely, if imperceptibly, the swampy margins have extended. Then appropriation commences. Ditches are cut and pump mills are erected. Years long gone by, the skeleton pump mill did nearly all the work. Then the tar-shaped article came into vogue. Powerful steam mills are now found cheaper to work and more effective, and thus has it happened that the erstwhile resort of snipe and bittern is covered with waving grain, and the partridge gleans amid the corn stubble above spots where the rudd and the bream, not many years before, were rooting and grubbing after larvae and mollusca amongst the subaqueous stems of reed and bulrush. Changes similar to these have reclaimed the fens from a chaos of waters to fertile acres, where sleek, fat kine deem life well worth the living; and no sooner does the heavy rainfall swamp the lower corners and fill the ditches, than the sails of the quaint old mills are placed before the wind, and the excessive water is pumped or otherwise thrown by a huge water wheel into the sluices connected with the sluggish river. By this means miles of marshes, separated from the tidal river only by a bank or wall, themselves below the level of flood tide, are kept free from inundation. As we slowly scull across the rippling waters of the Broad, we are roused from our rather pessimistic reverie by a noisy tumult as of quarrelsome birds. A cuckoo skims across a reed bed, to the terror or annoyance of some marsh tits that had been busy in among them. They join a mixed mob of tits and finches that are already at its heels. Have they mistaken it for a hawk, or is it a protestation against the cuckoo's fondness for usurping the rights of their little homesteads? A pair of black-headed buntings pass just above head. Several grebes are disporting themselves in the water ahead of us. What a merry life is theirs when unmolested! Their plumage is now at its best. Observe them through these glasses. What curious crested heads of white and brown and black, and what slender snake-like necks! One or two evidently are fishing. Let us lay to beside this tiny promontory on our right and watch them. There is a stake, left by some angler, who no doubt had a mind to erect a landmark to some propitious perch hole. Tie the painter to it. And now, whilst discussing luncheon, we shall have a better chance of observing the birds around us, for nothing conduces more to their hiding than the dodging to and fro of suspicious overlookers. What appetites the Broadland air gives birth to! There, it's just as we predicted. The grebes, emboldened by our silence, have been paddling well this way. How rapidly they swim! There's at least half a dozen of them. Now they dive. One has suddenly appeared above water with a juvenile roach between its mandibles. A couple fly past us in grotesque flight, with necks extended and with hanging feet. This characteristic bird of Broadland was at one time in danger of extermination, when the craze for grebeskin muffs and trimmings was stronger than the dictates of humanity and reason. Reed warblers peer out from the yellow reed stems. They will shortly be nesting. But we will forbear to trespass on their privacy. Weaving their cup of a nest, when the young green shoots are but a few inches above the waters, as we see them now, and using some 3 or 4 as a kind of scaffolding, little by little it is lifted as the reeds grow longer, until by the time the greenish white, brown blotched eggs have become replaced by the downy chicks that inhabited them, it is suspended at least a yard in the air. A little bay sweeps away on our left. The clicking of the coots has somewhat subsided. Surely there must have been some scandal going on this morning amongst them. See, a dark object has just come out from the reeds into the open water. Another follows. Those white foreheads make the coot's identity unmistakable. 3 or 4 red-billed moorhens are cautiously paddling in an opposite direction. There now, your clumsy stumbling on that oar has caught their quick ears and vision. How the moorhens take to startled flight, trailing their long feet upon the surface of the water, until rows of bubbles follow their receding forms. The coots dive under, and we see no more of them. They evidently come up in the reedy phalanx where the eye cannot penetrate. Behind the reed bed is a clump of alders. Willows point upwards their slender twigs. Behind them, and where the taller trees blot out the landscape beyond, are some silver beeches, contrasting their slender grey trunks against the deep green of the fir trees which bear them company. On the topmost bough of one of them a great blue heron has just alighted. What a grotesque fellow does he appear as! Balancing himself with his huge wings, he clutches the slender perch with his big strong toes and claws. Those beeches are as dead as can be. Some years ago the herons nested in the branches, but the onslaughts of prejudiced keepers ousted them, and they have elsewhere started their heronry. That fellow yonder, with his beautiful apron, is in magnificent plumage. He has simply come to take a passing survey, and will make up his mind, as he did last year, that to build here his home will be useless. With a harsh "Frank," he takes to wing and winnows his way to some ditches where the frogs are making amorous gossip, or perhaps to a beck where the little rudd or roach are enjoying the sunny warmth of the shallows. Failing these, the wakened newts or silvery sticklebacks will suit him just as well. We have tired of our survey, and again ply the oars. Hearken to the merry carol of the lark. Those feebler but sweeter notes are the love ditty of the blackcap. Splash! A green-headed mallard, followed by his plain brown wife, startled by the crackling of the reeds as our oar crashed in amongst them, flies up from a narrow weedless pool in the midst of the reed bed. What a grand fellow he looks as he overtops the reeds! Without a doubt, somewhere in the herbage beneath the distorted branches of those dwarf sallows, a nestful of pale green eggs is snugly covered. Those straggling curled leaves are the advance guard of the water lilies. We must drop in here again in the summer days, when the full spread leaves are crowding the placid waters, and the beautiful white flowers are resting upon the surface, and when the blue and yellow iris will be reproducing their bright tints in their reflected shadows. Those pure white swans yonder are contemplating nesting. Yon anglers are busy among the scaly inhabitants of the Broad. We will not disturb them. The swallows have been dashing here and there all day, and the plainer sand martins have been seen in goodly numbers. They seem to find enough to do among the awakening insects, especially those which delight to dance in sportive groups around and above the shooting broad plants. They tell us of sunnier days in store. Let us steer into the narrow sluice which runs apparently close to the Broad margin. Landing on a low-lying boggy spot, we throw our painter round the bole of a willow, and daintily pick our way along a sinuous path, the swampy soil sinking beneath our tread. We must keep on moving, or we shall come to grief in the quaking bog. Place your feet upon the grassy tussocks. The sedge-bird's notes are heard on every side. One anxious pair fussily fly around us, wishing us, no doubt, begone. Titlarks, twit twit, overhead. Here we are upon terra firma. At our feet stretches a well-weeded ditch, bright with the yellow kingcups. Great sprawling toads are clambering over and among the watercress, trailing their long gelatinous strings of ova, and a pair of yellow wagtails, in their resplendent golden of springtime, are searching for the larvae of insects. Here is an old willow stump covered with small leaved ivy. The sallows around us are adorned with woolly buds, among which great humble-bees drone and gossip. Yonder lapwings have laid their brown speckled eggs in the furrow, and those wood pigeons, making their way across the meadow, have already built their nests. Far away stretch fertile fields, the wooded hills beyond them forming an abrupt horizon. Here and there some grey and ivy mantled church tower marks the site of a village, the red tiled houses of which peer out from among the trees that guard it. Our horses' hoofs are once more smiting the road which trends towards the smoky town. A small brick bridge spans the tributary river that loses its identity in the narrow neck of a reed surrounded broad. The very reeds which line its banks link their roots with those which will be shortly waving their lanceolate leaves over the waters of the lagoon. A quaint Norfolk wherry lies moored beside the little staithe against the bridge. She is laden with bricks, which have been carted up from a neighbouring village. A towy-headed wherryman, topped with a red wool cap, makes a clumsy bow and wishes us good day. There is a refreshing smell of tea emanating from the cabin door, and a curl of faint blue smoke is issuing from the red wooden chimney. " Oan't yow have a cup of tea ?" the good humoured skipper queries, for he is a quondam friend of ours. We acquiesce, and jumping down we deliver the reins into the hands of his ' mate,' who has been sent ashore on purpose. Was ever such a quaint and picturesque craft? The shoots of Holland are not more in keeping with lowland scenery. " I know yow like my old wherry, Topsy, ye've told me so afore. Well, she's as rakish a craft as ever heeled to wind'ard, and she'll sail as close to the wind as any mortal thing afloat. I'm proud on her, and kape her as spick and span as mop and paint brush '11 make her. A heap of them London chaps have took her picture, some with them likeness fakers, and more 'an one ha' daubed her on a canvas. They say, 'bor, as how there ain't our sort of wherry found nowhere else in England. She's a bard of the Broadland waters, surely. Well, you see, she's built for local waters, and for local requirements. My craft, you know, is my livin' as well as my hobby. She's 50 foot in length, with a beam of 12, and scarcely draws 3 foot of water, and '11 carry 30 tons. Except this cabin, she's one long hold, the length of her. I don't suppose you'll find another craft with such a big sail for her size as a Norfolk wherry. Yow was amused, I know, with the for'ardness of the mast, but, you see, it's nicely balanced by that ton and a quarter of lead on its heel. That windlass runs it up and lets it down, just as we may want to hiss the sail or lower the mast to get benean a bridge. That little flag atop is a famous tell tale, for it's the slightest puff as is wanted to show the way the wind goes. When winds are fair, we spin along like lightnin', and when they're contrariwise, we hev to tack, in course. And should they fail us altogether, we simply hev to stick down the quant, and, clappin' the shoulder agin it, walk the plank and shove her along. 20 mile of that '11 make yer cough. But for us, Many of the villagers jindin' the rivers would find freightage rather awkward. But law, sir, wherryin's nothin' near what it were, for the railways have cut it up most awful. Still, as they doan't run everywhere, and as we can bate 'em on the score of chapeness, we shan't die out, us wherrymen, as yet. There's sights as 'ont come up to a fleet of wherries a startin' from Yarmouth on the early flood, some carryin' general cargoes, others corn, and others timber. It's a fine sight is seein' them cuttin' acrost old Breydon. So yow like my little cabin? Well, 'bor, there's many a wuss box 'an this to sleep in. Leastways, I sleep, and my mate he snores fit to bust up the hatchways. We're bachelors here, my mate an' me, you know, for his'n old woman lives up in the town, and mine's fixed up in the village 7 mile from here. We've got all the odds and ends for cookin' and comfort as we want. Jim ken make a puddin' or a dumplin', leastways he makes pretence at 'em, and if you can call a ball of wax inside kivered with a inch of sloppiness, he can make 'em and no mistake. And what duke could lie snugger'n we do at night time on these 'ere benches, with proper toggeries to make 'em soft and keep us warm. And my tea ain't bad, 'bor, for the leaves were left in from Monday, and this is Friday. Stop a minute, let me take that bit of baccy off as is floatin' in your cup. I 'spect that's an old quid as dropped off the mantel shelf. Now I'll just put the pot aside on the hob for Smiler, that's my mate, you know. And now for a pipe of baccy afore you go, 'bor.' A friendly gossip follows, in which the birds and beasties and various items that delight a Broadland naturalist are discussed with mutual relish, but which space forbids to detail. 2 hours later, Boxer is munching his hay in the stable at home, and a savoury bloater, fresh down from the ' loves,' is engrossing our own attentions. Chapter 5